But before we get to that, our next guest company has acquired over 20 million pieces of relevant and effective content across 500 schools. Jessica recently spoke with this expert in e-learning.
So many of us are still finding our way through this new normal, and that includes plenty of lessons at home. The classroom is now in our home space, and many of us are left wondering, how can we make this as normal as possible and continue the semester as planned? We're joined by Kevin Wu, the co-founder and chief operational officer at OneClass. Kevin, it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. You've got some insight today to share because so many of us are wondering, how can we get to some sense of normalcy in terms of curriculum and wrapping up a semester that just was cut short for so many?
Yeah, so, I've been in the education space for quite some time now. I think this is probably one of the most challenging times I've ever seen it for both, parents and students. I really think that during these times of school closures, it's important to have structure. It's important to try to maintain that structure when you're at home. So I think, having a set schedule with your children and your kids to make sure that, let's say, we're allocating an hour a day for reading, an hour for math, and trying to keep up with that regular routine. I think that's something really important for families.
Yeah, routine is definitely key, but a lot of parents are also juggling the routine of now teleworking and working from home. But setting a schedule that's realistic on both fronts will probably help. Schools are now sort of more so than getting with the program. They're starting to lead the charge in different ways. They're adapting during quarantine, aren't they?
For sure, for sure. And I think we've seen a lot of teachers, especially getting used to, new online tools to be able to interact with their students through a variety of different software. I think definitely there is going to be a learning curve. I think some teachers have had more success than others. So it'll be important for teachers to really figure out who in the class is a little bit shy when it comes to teleconferencing and spending more time with those students who are a little bit behind compared to the rest of the class.
That's a great point that you highlight. You still have to consider personalities and how they're going to engage, whether it is the teacher or it's your classroom full of students, if that's going on virtually.
For sure, for sure. And we work with quite a few parents and students, and some of them have had trouble getting used to the new online learning environment. So that's where we really try to help with our tutors who are able to spend, one-on-one time with the students. It's very, very challenging, I think, for educators because all of a sudden they're engaging with the entire class simultaneously. It's difficult to tell if students are really paying attention or, they can just open up a tab in their web browser and start looking at YouTube. So I think it's really essential for students to really try to work with the teachers because it's like I said, challenging for everyone right now.
So aside from maybe getting caught in that drift, right, when you are in that classroom space, opening a tab and maybe, checking something else out, what are some of the other common pitfalls that you're seeing with remote learning and how can we avoid them?
I would say for parents, it's critical to make sure that you are setting up the classroom environment, wherever the student is going to be learning, you're setting them up in a quiet area of the house. I would say maybe the kitchen table would be a good idea, but really an area of your home that is free from any sort of distractions. Definitely, try to stay away from having the students take the classes in their room because they're more likely to get distracted by other things that might be going on. So try to make sure it's a environment that's conducive to learning.
Yeah, building that schedule as you recommended and then making that space that is dedicated for it, makes perfect sense. Is this a universal from young through maybe older and even for an education staff that's used to being on a university campus? I mean, I guess there are opportunities for educators at every level too during this time.
Yeah, we've been hearing a lot of stories about how certain higher education personnel have been furloughed because the campus is now closed and the schools have to try to maintain, their resources. And during this time, I think it's been a transitional period for a lot of these educators. But throughout this whole crisis, I think it's apparent that more than ever, we need a way to deliver learning to students even when they're outside of the classroom. So, there's a lot of online education companies like ours who will be hiring quite a few, whether it's part-time or full-time educators going forward. So I think, for the next months and also for the foreseeable future, there are going to be a lot of teaching opportunities online for a lot of these educators.
And you mentioned too, taking advantage of those tutoring services, both as a student and maybe as an educator. Maybe you can put your skills to use in that way as well.
Exactly, exactly. So for ourselves, really trying to help out the parents and students as much as we can, we actually launched daily live classes, covering a lot of popular subjects like algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and we are providing those classes free of charge to students and parents out there, Monday through Sunday. Additionally, we are also offering 100,000 hours of free tutoring for students and parents out there. So parents, if you're at home and you're struggling to help your student through a particular math problem, come to OneClass and we'll be able to assist you with those problems.
That's fantastic and incredibly generous, because I think there are so many of us saying, didn't I leave this algebra behind?
Yeah,
And now you've got to
exactly.
around it again.
Exactly. And, now that teachers are transitioning to online teaching, they probably have even less time, being able to interact with the parents and students. So we really want to do everything we can to try to help everyone out.
Well, we appreciate it. We'll share information so everybody knows how to access that. Kevin Wu, co-founder and chief operational officer with OneClass. We appreciate you making time for us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Be safe and be well. And we'll share that information so that you can access those resources from OneClass at home. They'll be on WTBR.com/BTM later today.